it's a lot of money. But when he took this pay package, nobody else I know in business would have accepted an all-performance pay package for a company that CNBC was reporting was on the verge of bankruptcy. So pay the man his due. He works his butt off. He's the most innovative CEO we have in America. And I think it's a shame. I think it's a travesty we're even having this discussion.
Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Today is going to be a quick episode. It is my birthday today. Now, personally, I'm not a big birthday guy, but I am a family man, so I'd like to spend some time with them. And there was actually a fair amount of meaningful news today, so figured it'd be worth running through it. McKinsey put out a new survey, and the results, more than 4 in 10 owners of EVs in the United States are likely to buy a combustion car for their next purchase. And this one was not a trivial study like some of the others that we'll see online. In this case, they asked around 200 questions to more than 30,000 consumers in 15 countries, which collectively comprise more than 80% of global sales volume. 29% of EV owners around the world said they're likely to reverse course, and that number hit 46% in the United States. Globally, the top concern was the inadequacy of the public charging infrastructure. On that note, one of the more frustrating news stories that keeps popping up are these thieves who are now stealing the cables across different fast charging sites across the country. Main reason, the price of copper. Not only are non-supercharger locations already not that reliable, but to now have customers showing up where maybe a reliable site where the cables are now cut off is just not a great situation. Back to the McKinsey survey, 21% of global respondents do not want to ever switch to an EV. That number may seem daunting at first, but just keep in mind that this part of the transition, especially in a place like the United States, we really only need 1/3 of the population to be considering an EV, as we're still only between 7 and 10% adoption. Finally, 38% of non-EV owners say they anticipate a hybrid or a full EV will be their next vehicle. That's up from 37% in 2022. I'll be honest though, this 40% number is a lot higher than I would have guessed for this number. I would have said maybe 10 to 15% of people don't like the EV experience yet, too soon, public infrastructure, all of that, but 40% is certainly up there. Again, no need to panic. The infrastructure will get better over time, and hopefully these companies like Iona can actually come through and improve the infrastructure. It's just going to take time. In the newsletter, we said these EU tariffs are coming, and now they're here. They can be up to 38% on EVs imported from China starting in July. The EU said this higher end 38% will be on automakers who do not cooperate with the investigation that started last year, and it'll be 21% on Chinese EV makers which have not been sampled. In short, different automakers are going to be slapped with different levels of this tariff. BYD's will be 17.4%, and Geely, however you prefer, and SAIC will see theirs increase to 20 and 38% respectively. The Swedish Prime Minister actually came out against these tariffs, saying as far as tariffs are concerned, we are in agreement. It's a bad idea to dismantle global trade. So now we watch all of the workarounds come to fruition, but they are saying at tariff levels lower than around 50%, exporting products to the EU would still be commercially appealing for many automakers. Saying for BYD, this burden is barely more than the EU's pre-existing 10% duty. What we'll see now is the larger automakers with money will actually set up manufacturing operations within the EU. And of course, most places across the EU actually want that, so they can set up local supply chains and have jobs for their people. And whether it's full-on manufacturing or something they call a halfway house, kind of like what Lucid is doing in Saudi Arabia, where they ship parts there and then just do the final assembly at that location. Polestar's CEO Thomas Ingenloth already said that they could export cars into the EU from their site in South Carolina in the US. And as it stands now, hybrids nor ICE vehicles will actually fall under these new tariffs. They're for full BEVs only. Bear in mind, Tesla exported over 344,000 vehicles from Shanghai in 2023. All they're saying about how these new tariffs may impact Tesla right now is that at this stage, Tesla may receive an individually calculated duty rate. Zooming out, these new tariffs are still only provisional duties that will come come into effect July 4th if the EU does not reach a solution with Chinese authorities. And then 4 months after this, so-called definitive measures take place. Tesla's EU sales are already the weakest when it comes to their Shanghai in the United States, so not a great development, but we still have to see what the rate will be, and will this turn out to be a case of Giga Berlin, we're going to start relying on you a lot more. All I know for now, certainly something to watch. The Tesla Megapack has been chosen for a new battery energy storage project in the UK, and it'll be paired with an offshore wind farm. It's a 600 megawatt hour system that's expected to be operational by the end of 2026. When complete, the battery storage will be one of the largest in Europe. This portion of this project should require around 150 Tesla Megapacks at $2 million a pop. That's a $300 million order. Adam Jonas and Morgan Stanley put out a new note talking about why they think that Tesla will probably actually make a phone, to which Elon responded, "We could, but hopefully it is not needed." Tesla is one of the few companies that has its own tech stack, not iOS, Android, or forked Android. At this point, I still think XAI would be the most likely candidate for an Elon company to make a phone. It could still integrate very well with Tesla. And look, I would certainly buy a Tesla phone, but for this one, I think you can at least make the argument this would feel like a distraction. Tesla has released a new Air Mattress for the Model Y. It's $225, but at the moment, it appears to be sold out. I'm sure many of you have seen ARK Invest's new Tesla stock price target for 2029. Before we even touch on it, Tasha said we conservatively assumed Tesla does not sell Optimus externally in our model, and that Optimus manufacturing savings modestly impact Tesla's costs in single-digit percentages over the next 5 years. We've talked about some of the limitations of what ARK uses. It's called a Monte Carlo simulation. It really just helps to account for uncertainty by trying to determine the probability of different outcomes. And on the other hand, a traditional DCF or discounted cash flow model is what you'll see from Wall Street more often, but that doesn't really do well of accounting for uncertainty. So we're not going to dive deeper into that today. It's not that important. Just know that ARK's expected value for Tesla by 2029 is $2,600 per share. That would be roughly a 14x from where Tesla is today. Their bear case is $2,000 a share and their bull case is $3,100 per share, which means their bear case is an 11x from today's levels and their bull case would be a 17x. But first, let's go back to ARK's 2020 Tesla stock price targets for 2024. In 2020, ARK was expecting Tesla to be valued at $7,000 in 2024. Remember though, Tesla has split its stock 15 times since then. 7,000 divided by 15 is about $466. I'd remind everybody that in 2021, 3 years before ARK's projection, Tesla stock did actually hit around $415. But here's the problem with a lot of these models. The conversation really should be what analysis did ARK get right versus did they just get lucky with what happened with the market and the macro. Back to ARK's 2020 Tesla stock price for 2024, their bear case was $1,500 divided by 15, $100 per share, and their bull case divided by 15 would have been $1,000 per share for Tesla stock this year. So at least where Tesla stock is today, we're a lot closer to their bear case. Now, here's where I would give ARK a lot of credit. For their 2020 predictions, they had this section of probabilities where they had no autonomy solved for Tesla. If you take their highest 2024 price target for that group, that was actually $3,400 divided by 15, which is about $226 per share. Thus, another way to think of this would have been Tesla's bull case in the event that they have not yet solved for autonomy. I've seen plenty of people online blasting ARK saying that they thought Tesla was going to solve autonomy by 2024, but if you look at their simulations from 2020, that's really not the case. Sure, they said it was possible, but they only assigned a 30% probability to that outcome. So 70% of their expected outcomes were actually that Tesla would not solve autonomy by 2024. So there's me giving credit to ARK, but here you're going to see me point out where ARK got got it wrong. They said for that 2020 projection, their bear case implied Tesla will sell 3.2 million cars in 2024. And as we all know, the way things are trending this year, I think Tesla would be very lucky to do anything over 2 million. They also had their bull case at the time, Tesla doing 7.1 million sales this year. Thus, when it comes to auto delivery analysis, they were pretty significantly far off. With all of that context out there, Cathie Wood did say in January 2020, Tesla was going over $6,000 per share, and her timeline for that was in the next 5 years. Adjusting for the stock split, this would be $400 per share, and as we highlighted earlier, Tesla actually exceeded that number back in 2021. Now looking at their latest price targets again for 2029, their bear outcome for cars sold is 5.8 million and their bull case would be 14.4 million. Also of note, the percent of simulations indicating Tesla's first year with robotaxi commercialization, 58% were 2025 and 38% were 2026. Translation, ARK is pretty confident Tesla will launch its robotaxi service by 2026. Honestly though, here we have more limitations with this type of model. They're also not really including anything for the Tesla Semi, the supercharging network, FSD licensing, or AI as a service. In fairness, we know any licensing deal for Tesla's FSD is going to take at least 3 to 5 years for any legacy OEM to actually implement, so I understand that. AI as a service, Dojo is still a long shot, I understand that. About the supercharger network, ARK said, we believe Tesla is likely to reorient its funding toward charging infrastructure optimized for robotaxis. While essential for EVs, according to ARK's research, superchargers are unlikely to generate significant revenue for Tesla. That's certainly up for debate, and on the Tesla Semi, they said, we don't believe the Semi will contribute significantly to Tesla's value within our 5-year investment time horizon. And you can certainly argue relative to robotaxis, the Semi won't move the needle much, but that doesn't mean it won't move the needle at all. About ARK's model, Elon did say, I'm curious to read this. The more I think about robotaxis and humanoid robots, the more absurd the valuation becomes. He also quote posted Tasha saying, interesting, spreading their research. I wanted to highlight there are plenty of limitations with ARK's model and they got some things right and wrong the last time around, but zooming out and relative to the rest of Wall Street and where their price targets were over the last 5 years, ARK has really been in a league of its own. Again, not that they get everything right or they should be treated as gospel, but at least directionally speaking, when it comes to the stock price, they have really been the most right. The truth is, nobody has any idea how a generalized autonomous solution will be rolled out in the United States, let alone globally, so it's going to be fun to watch. I'll have the full report linked below. Now, to bring everybody back down to earth after thinking about a 17x for Tesla stock over the next 5 years, JP Morgan just met with Tesla's new head of IR and they're not that impressed. And their takeaway? Investors expecting Tesla to build a business around robotaxis in short order are likely to be disappointed. JP said, we expect Tesla to show a robotaxi concept on August 8th and perhaps an accompanying app and to reveal more about its expected business model. But we do not expect material revenue generation likely for years to come. And look, many of you know ordinarily I would not pay any attention to JP Morgan. Their Tesla stock targets have typically been way off. They're butting heads with Tesla and the whole nine. But in this case, they're saying their expectation is based in part on their analyst's recent meeting with Tesla's director of IR. They said the IR exec suggested Tesla will build robotaxis off the next generation vehicle platform that will not launch until the company is much closer to fully utilizing its existing production capacity, which may take several years. They also said Tesla has yet to stand up much of the infrastructure it would need for such a service, nor has it secured regulatory approval to test driverless vehicles on public roads. Now, on that latter point, we've heard Tesla execs say they're not really worried about getting approval across the United States. It's also true that Tesla doesn't really have dedicated infrastructure like a hub in different cities for these robotaxis to charge and be cleaned, but Tesla is scrappy, it does well with what it has, and there's no reason it couldn't start something like that at its existing service centers or wherever and then ultimately branch out from there. But I think you would agree, the line from Tesla's head of IR that the next-gen vehicle platform won't launch until Tesla is much closer to fully utilizing its existing production capacity, which may take several years, was a bit of a surprise given that some are expecting them to launch this robotaxi as soon soon as Q1 2025. But will Tesla launch a more affordable traditional vehicle before the robotaxi? All questions hopefully we have answered in a few short weeks. This was a really good comparison video showing the adaptive headlights for this new feature. When you actually go around a corner, they will shift so you can see around the corner a lot better. Ford's low-cost EV Skunk Works team has now grown to 300 employees over the past year. That includes 50 coming from Rivian, more than 20 from Tesla, and a dozen from Canoo. It also hired around 10 employees from Lucid and a handful from Apple. Ford also hired 2 senior aerodynamicists away from Formula One. So far, it's a pretty lean team with potentially a lot of talent and some great experience, so I really like what I'm hearing about this project. Farley said all of our EV teams are ruthlessly focused on cost and efficiency in our EV products because the ultimate competition is going to be the affordable Tesla and the Chinese OEMs. I think Ford has the right strategy. Get its Gen 1 EVs out into the market, do as best you can with them, but then for Generation 2, really go back to first principles, start over, and figure it out from the ground up. The UAW has reached its first agreement with an EV battery plant here in the US. If this deal is ratified by the members, it'll double the pay of workers at the Ultium plant in Lordstown, Ohio. This is the one that's a joint venture between GM and LG. If it's ratified, this agreement will raise the top production wage from $20 after 7 years on the job to $35 after 1 year on the job by the end of the deal. The starting wage will increase from $16.50 per hour to $26.91. Most members will see a $3.59 an hour raise immediately. They said workers will have better health and safety language at Ultium than anywhere in the industry. This is certainly great for all of the workers, but when it comes to GM's competitiveness with its Ultium vehicles and the margins, certainly not as great. If you need one last dose of encouragement before the vote tomorrow, Florida's pension board voted in support of Elon's comp plan. They own 2.89 million shares and they're Tesla's 80th biggest investor. We have Waymo issuing a software and a mapping recall after one of their robotaxis crashed into a phone pole. The accident happened last month and they said the vehicle was damaged, but no passengers or bystanders were hurt in the incident. I think this highlights some of the challenges of relying on updated HD maps to such a large degree. Waymo said they would update their maps to account for the hard road edge in the alleyway that was not previously included. Tesla stock closed the day at $177.29, up 3.88%, while the Nasdaq was up 1.53%. It was a higher volume day for Tesla, trading about 18 million shares above the average volume the past 30 days. My plan for the next 2 days on the channel will be to upload a video tomorrow, later Thursday night, sometime after the annual meeting, and then to take the day off on Friday. Depending on what Ashley and I choose to do for my birthday weekend, and depending on the news flow, I may send out a newsletter edition on Friday. But either way, don't expect a video from Electrified on Friday. Hopefully tomorrow you all can enjoy the meeting. Just remember, no matter what happens with all of this voting, it's just the next step. It's by no means the end of the story either way. It's really just the next milestone, and no matter how it goes, I would expect Tesla to play the hand it's dealt very well. And as most of us know, sometimes that's really all you can do. Although I will say I'm feeling a lot more optimistic about Elon's comp plan vote now than I was a few weeks back. The moving to Texas vote feels like a flip of the coin, if anything, maybe leaning doubtful. But we'll find out soon enough. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Please like the video if you did. You can find me on X linked below, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.